Hello everybody and welcome to the Open eCry market commentary for the week of April 15th. My name is Toby Gennaro from Trade with Precision and just coming to you with the outlook for the markets this week. And here we are looking at the ES futures contracts representing the S&P 500. And as we normally do, looking at the top-down charts, nothing really new here on the monthly chart. We have a new candle here. We're right in the middle of the month of April, but obviously you can see the succession here of higher highs, higher lows, breaking through that 1530 level last month, and then really never even coming down to retest that level or just back up to, once again, a new high. As we move over to the weekly chart, we still don't really have a lot of overextension from on the weekly chart from the moving averages. But as you can see, the succession here of higher highs, higher lows for, really almost the last quite a few months here. And again, just putting in a new high up around that 1594 level. And coming down into the daily chart, we can see we have a little bit of a bearish candle there at that most recent high. And then we have a break through the low of that candle. Looks like we might be pulling down, maybe pulling back into some of these levels, back into the moving averages, somewhere around this, maybe this 1559, 1560 level. All the way up to as high as this 1566 level. So it really depends on what some of the other time frames here are going to tell us. But as we look at the 480 chart, I've just put in a Fibonacci retracement here from the most recent low that we had up to the most recent high, and then just looking for a pullback now that we've basically have a lower high and a lower low in place on some of these charts on the lower time frames. It looks like we might be getting a little deeper pullback into possibly this 50% or the 62% retracement level. So we have a little bit of overlap here at the 62% level, hanging right around that 1559 level. And then if you check your charts from last week, we also have a gap on the ES that didn't fill last week, and that gap fills right around that 1563 level. So we have a couple of things clustering right around these levels right here, and then a lot of historical price action here that's pretty recent, where we should be able to find some support there and then find some buy orders collecting in this area to then push the market at least back up to potentially the most recent high. But overall, you have to consider a number of things going on in the market. There's a lot of news coming out around North Korea, a lot of news coming out around Europe, and so then in the U.S. here we have all the earnings reports coming out over the next couple of weeks. So a lot of news coming out, and so I'm just kind of biding my time here, being a little bit cautious on some of these things, and then just looking to really do some intraday trading to see where I can get long with the trend on some of these setups. So being that we had last week, we had a setup candle right there in the buy zone, a beautiful setup candle on the 480 chart, and there was also a setup candle on the 240 chart, but we never did get a break of a high of these candles, which is essentially our trend flow trade strategy that we're teaching in the advanced course. So once we don't get a breakup through the high, we get a breakdown through the low, really invalidates our trade, and then we're looking for another setup candle in the buy zone, potentially on some higher time frames, like again on the 480, and then potentially for the first time on the daily chart with a potential setup happening maybe right around some of this price congestion right here. So we'll have to see what this week holds, but that's really what I'm looking for. And then looking for some of these levels down here where we have some overlap of the Fibonacci along with some historical price action and some gap fill levels. So that's what things are looking like on the ES. Still bullish on the markets, but just being a little cautious here with all the news coming out and all the headlines hitting in the past week or two. And moving on down to the small cap stocks here on the Russell 2000 contract. Again, looking at some of the higher time frames here. Nothing new on the monthly chart. Again, just basically put in a second touch of that level up around that 951 level. And as we look on at the weekly chart, we can see just a nice uptrend here in the last couple of months. Then putting in several touches here over the last almost basically 4 or 5 weeks of that level right up around 950, 951. And we can see that a lot better here on the daily chart. We can see one touch, 2 touch, 3 touches, and then here we just had just shy of the 4th touch right there. So we're sitting at a nice flat level there. The only problem is we're getting a nice got a nice bearish candle right there off of that flat level, broke through the low of that, and we're pulling back down. We got the moving averages, the 10 and the 20, rolled over in the opposite direction, but we're right up against the level there at 933, which has been support for quite a while, going back all the way to just January, February of this year. And we can also see quite a bit of divergence here on this last touch. We've got quite a difference there on an equal high, and then really just quite a bit lower high on both the MACD and the RSI indicators. Again, strong trends like this, markets can diverge for a long time, but in looking at some of our trend flow trade setups on some of these lower time frames, looking to get long this market, we have a nice setup here around this 933 level. Don't really have a setup candle here in the buy zone yet, and we're not really seeing anything setting up on some of the lower time frames. So we do have a little double touch here at this level right around 933. So it's possible we could be getting a bounce off of there back up. And I'm really anticipating a little deeper pullback in the markets based off of some of this divergence here, and then looking at basically almost kind of like a reversal structure here, and looking for the markets possibly to move down, maybe down to this 911 level before we actually get a move back up to the high. The only other snare I'd be looking at would be a bounce off of 933, then back up to the high, which would then give us some diverging chart structures here on probably the 240 and the 120, which would then probably give us, that would give us what, a fifth touch to this level, and then potentially maybe a deeper pullback. So we'd really want to see a move up to this level and then a break of this 951 level before actually looking to get long this market again. So we're kind of in a little bit of no man's land right here. We do have some support around this level right here, but I'd be looking for a little deeper pullback based on all the news that's coming out in the market, just to see what's going to happen and what's going to shake out. Another thing I'd be looking for is a nice setup candle here on the 480 chart. If we can get a nice bullish candle set up here, and then another nice bullish candle setting up probably on the 240 chart, or potentially if we can get a very bullish candle here on the daily chart and then get those moving averages cross back up in the right direction, then we can start to look at potentially getting long back up into this 951 level. So not a whole lot of good setups there on the small cap stocks, the Russell contract, but still looking to try to follow this trend. All the charts are up, so we're certainly looking to follow the momentum. We're just looking for the right place in the price action to do that. And we'll just take a look at one more of the U.S. indices here, looking at technology stocks here on the NASDAQ 100. And as we can see, we don't really have a flat level in right here on these three touches. It's not very precise, but we do have what looks to be a second touch right around this level of 2864 on the monthly chart. So again, monthly chart means it's going to take a long time for any type of a flat level to develop on that particular chart. But as we move down to some of the other time frames, like the weekly chart, we can see that level in there pretty close. Right there puts in a second touch, so it looks like we're getting a pullback on some of these other time frames here, and we don't have really any overextension on the weekly chart, but we did get some overextension last week on the weekly chart, so it looks like we might be due for for a pullback, potentially maybe into this some of this historical price congestion right here around 2817, 2818 level. And so we can see that pretty good on the 480 chart. The one thing that I like here is the trend flow strategy setup. So we have all the moving averages in alignment on all the higher time frames. And then we have a really nice bullish candle setting up right there that's closed out. We haven't broken the high of that candle on the 480, and it looks like we're going lower, but we haven't broken the low of that candle, which would essentially invalidate our trade. As we move over to the 240-minute time frame, we can see we got that same bullish candle right there in the time zone. Right there in the buy zone, and then we just had a slight break of that, and then it came right back down. Still, the trade has not broken below that level, so it hasn't invalidated the trade, but we want to see a break above the high of these setup candles on the trend flow strategy on 2 time frames at least. So we didn't get that break on the 480, which essentially kept us out of the trade. So we want to make sure that we look to see if we can get another setup candle, or one if we get a break down below the low of these 2 setup candles on the 480 and the 240. Get a breakdown below that low, then more than likely we have to look for another lower low putting in here, and then look for another setup candle potentially on maybe a higher time frame like the daily chart, possibly even on the weekly chart. So that's what I'd be looking for right there. There's a setup there that's active. It just looks like it's going to be probably invalidated since the markets across the board are pulling back. But I'd be keeping an eye on that one and see if you might get another setup candle here in the buy zone on these couple of time frames around the 240, the 480, and see if that gives us an opportunity there for a trend flow setup. So there's the lay of the land for the week on the U.S. indices, and I would like to thank you for watching the Open Cry market commentary for the week of April 15th, and we do look forward to speaking to you next week on the market update.